I was on the phone with a friend of mine, a typical catching up conversation where we ended up talking for hours. We discussed Berserk, a dark fantasy manga, and how we both loved the story since it is extraordinarily tragic. I'm pretty sure just by playing its soundtrack right now, I'm making at least one person tear up. And that one person may or may not be me. Anyways, he said if tragic stories really are my thing, that I should play Expedition 33. Some months later, there was a Steam sale, a bit of peer pressure, and I finally gave in. This is legitimately a once-in-a-decade sort of game. The mechanics, superb script, atmosphere, music, and the subject of this video, the story, were firing on all cylinders. I'm gonna spoil this entire game, so this is your one and only spoiler warning. If you haven't beaten this game yet, and you don't want to know what happens, click off this video now. If you've played this game already, and want to skip the plot synopsis to hear my thoughts on the ending, go to this timecode. Though, I'm only going to summarize as much of the plot as I need to discuss the ending. Otherwise, this video will be entirely too long. The game is structured into 3 acts, with each act being named after the character it centers around. For Act 1, our protagonist is Gustave, a man in the village of Lumiere. The player gets to roam around the city on only what is known as a significant day, the Gamage. Gustave is on his way to talk to his ex-girlfriend, Sophie. By this point, the player knows it is her last day alive, though we don't quite know why. Gustave and Sophie spend the last hour of the afternoon together, and through talking to various townsfolk, we piece together what the Gamage is. An annual event wherein everyone past a continually decreasing age vanishes away into flower petals. This age is displayed on a monolith outside the village, and it's about to tick down to 33, Sophie's age. This horrid event ostensibly occurs because of an evil deity known as the Paintress, a towering woman off the coast of the island by the monolith. We also learned that Gustave wanted kids, but Sophie did not due to the cruelty of this event, hence their breakup. After enjoying each other's company, the fateful hour arrives, and Gustave has to watch his former lover vanish as they hold hands. While the player can tell he was prepared for this to happen, no one is truly ready to see a loved one fade away like this. The music that plays when Sophie is gamaged is exquisite, simultaneously beautiful but filled with sorrow. I was dumbfounded that this game, with such little playtime, already had me emotionally invested. Gustave's look here is clearly of sadness, but you empathize with the world-burning anger that can't be far behind. After each gamage, the village sends volunteers who are 1 year away from becoming flowers themselves to confront the Paintress. These people are expeditioners, with their designation being referred to by the number on the monolith, hence the title of the game, Expedition 33. Gustave is part of it and one of its more esteemed and promising members as an engineer of great renown. The name Gustave means Staff of the Gods, and is often used to denote someone who is a leader, a fitting name for a character shown to be quite the optimist and purveyor of a clear vision. Or, perhaps more simply, his name comes from Gustave Eiffel, the man who designed the Eiffel Tower. I choose the latter because this game is so French that it makes you want to buy baguettes and berets.
Oh, oui, baguette.
Also along for the ride is Maëlle, Gustave's adopted sister who is 16, much younger than the rest of the group. She volunteered because she can't stand spending more time in Lumiere, just waiting to be gamaged like her parents were. Their closeness and value to each other is apparent, with their age disparity adding a father-daughter dynamic to their existing sibling relationship. During an expedition departure festival, you can talk to NPCs to learn more about this world. The player learns that the expedition started 67 years ago, ever since the Fracture, an event which split apart the continents and began the Gamage cycle. Curiously, the first expedition sent was not Expedition 100, but rather Expedition 0, proving once again that those darn computer scientists had a hand in making this game and writing history. Anyways, I noticed that there are way too many characters here. Ain't no way this game is gonna flesh out. Saw that one coming. This is where the game takes a pivot from what looks like a typical fantasy adventure to dark fantasy, and oh boy is it gonna get grim. Gustav almost kills himself right next to the body of Catherine, a character introduced in cutscenes, only to be stopped by a survivor of the massacre, Lune, a fellow expeditioner and friend. And I just gotta say, I love this entire interaction. Gustav exhibits a realistic response here. His whole team is dead as far as he knows, including Mael, a person he swore to protect. Fighting to the end be damned, he's lost enough already. And to be stopped by a friend interacting so nonchalantly is incredibly human, showcasing that it only takes the smallest of things to keep one's worst instincts at bay. Gustav and Lune continue with the mission, fighting their way through Nevrons, creatures that range in appearance from your average fantasy enemy to eldritch nightmares. Gustav, though no longer suicidal, is extremely distressed about not having found Mael yet. This culminates in an argument with Lune.
I am not letting Mael die out here. I'm taking her home.
What? No, we have a mission!
Oh, fuck the mission! Fuck the mission, Lune!
I didn't take you for a coward.
But I'm not afraid to fight, it's just Mael, she's...
Mael swore the same oath!
I know that!
She chose her life. You and I... Come on, we always said the future of Lumiere is more important than
any individual life, yes.
Do you still believe that? Do you still believe that?
I love that Lune states this. As a general rule, beliefs are not what people say, it's what they do. That's genuine wisdom right there. Eventually, you do find Mael, who is taken to a mystical manor and is under the care of a mysterious entity known as the Curator, who joins your group as an NPC to help upgrade your equipment. She subsequently leads us to a village she's been frequenting, filled with eccentric creatures known as Gestrels. There, we find Ciel, another Expedition 33 member, chilling as a prize fighter. After this regroup, the expedition continues apace. From this point onwards, Mael starts having visions and nightmares about the mysterious man who massacred most of their comrades and sees other unknown individuals. She's noticeably shaken up each time this happens, and the player nor the rest of the party has a clue as to why. She's warned at one point by the man to run away, to go back to Lumiere with her friends to live out what remains of their lives in peace. This game is so economical with developing its characters, it cannot be overstated. Interactions that last for maybe a page of script tell you so much about your merry little band, and you want these people to succeed just so you can keep watching them be friends and comrades in this fantastical world. Things are now trending upwards past the dark fantasy equivalent of Normandy, after all. Gustav is such a lovable character, and I figured the game wouldn't do the cliche of the mentor figure being killed. Crap. Gustav is killed by the same man who killed the expeditioners at the start of the game, and there's nothing you can do about it. The gang is ultimately saved by a mysterious man named Verso. It's clear he has some history with Gustav's murderer, and that he's betraying him in some way, but we can't contextualize their conversation at this point. And, man, I just gotta say, Gustav's death really freaking hurt. While this prevents more of the game's budget from going to Charlie Cox's voice acting, Gustav was the heart and soul of this story, the vanishing of which ushers in a significant tonal shift for the rest of the game. Act 2 bears Verso's name, and is where most of the story occurs. The word verso most literally translates to the reverse side of, in reference to coins, paintings, loose papers, or even the left-hand page of an open book. The clear vision represented by Gustav has now been replaced with the opposite, obscurity and uncertain motivations. Probably a good time to also mention that clair obscur most literally translates to light dark in French. It references the chiaroscuro drawing style, which is composed purely of contrasting light and dark, opposites being used to express something else entirely. Surely, this is not a massive dose of thematic foreshadowing. Anyways, one of the many things learned during this act is that the man who killed the bulk of Expedition 33 and Gustav is Renoir, Verso's father and the leader of Expedition 0. With each forced revelation from Verso, the group has a mixed reaction, with Ciel always being more trusting, Lune being skeptical, and Mael being oddly understanding. The group largely warms up to Verso as he advises on next steps, finds a suitable place to bury Gustave's signature mechanical arm, showcases his alcoholism,
Is that wine?
and shows off his immortality in the most unambiguous way.
Hi.
Oh, Verso, there you are. How did... Oh, fuck, oh my... wow!
What is that?
We're both Verso.
You are so ridiculous.
This stretch of the story is intriguing because the player will likely suspect that Verso knows far more than he's letting on. This is due to the conversations he has with Minoko and Eskie, two more allies that were picked up along the way that are natives to this mystical world. Eskie serves as your transportation around the continent, and Minoko is a gestural version of Ash Ketchum, but with a foot fetish. I'm giving no further context to that comment, just play the game and I assure you, it'll make sense. Clair Obscur has you on a fixed story, but introduces relationship levels with characters in your party. This mechanic is how you unlock a small subset of abilities and learn more about the group. The things required for these unlocks are more like secondary quests, and out of the 15 unlockable abilities, it's only possible to lock yourself out of one. All of that to say, the dialogue options don't change any of the primary story beats. I really love this design choice because 1, I'm horribly indecisive, and 2, I have been discouraged in the past with games misleading the player with just inane, unpredictable consequences. Being a spectator of a set story is just fine if the story is simply that good. So during Act 2, I was anticipating the next twist. We eventually face Renoir for a final showdown, followed up by the Paintress herself. The music here reaches a fever pitch as you dodge and parry to murk this old man. And then the Paintress has a two-phase boss fight wherein she literally rips reality apart to try and kill you. And then, the Paintress has a third phase, but she instead heals the party as you finish taking down the rest of her health. Verso cradles her as she is gommaged by Maëlle, who seemed to have a bizarre interaction with her as she faded from the world. Anyways, this victory results in the gang returning to Lumiere, then you witness all the citizens of Lumiere gommage right in front of you. What the fuck? Okay, time for a summary of the massive lore dump that happens here. Renoir, the Paintress, whose real name is Aline, Verso, Clea, and Alicia comprise the Descendra family who have the gift of painting. They can create entire worlds of sentient life known as canvases. Once created, the worlds exist with a piece of the creator's soul, snapshotted at that time, imbued to it until it is destroyed. This is quite a literal take on an artist's soul being in their work. The world we've come to know and love is Verso's only canvas, painted when he was a child. Verso, in the real world, died in a house fire which was started by a rival faction to the painters, known as the Writers, which I'm just going to interpret as the most meta joke of all time. Verso managed to save Alicia from the fire, though she sustained severe injuries. She's missing an eye, her face is deformed, and she cannot speak properly. Aline, overcome with grief, pushed herself into Verso's canvas, making the first generation of Lumierans. She painted a mirror version of her family in this world, including the Renoir we've defeated, Alicia, the Verso we're playing as, and Clea. The mirror family was granted immortality. When these painted versions of Renoir and Verso made it to the Paintress in Expedition Zero, they learned the truth, and then slaughtered their own expedition and many others to keep this world alive. Renoir, from the real world, entered this canvas to get Aline out, and he attempts to erase its creations from the inside. This results in the gommage cycle, gommage being French for erasure. Aline has spent so much time in the canvas that her power was beginning to wane, which is why each year she can only save all creations below a certain age. Painted Renoir was trying to stop us from allowing the canvas to be destroyed, and the Curator is the real Renoir trying to help us destroy the world. Alicia went into the canvas to try and retrieve Aline as well, but was overwhelmed by her power and recoded into the character of Maëlle with her memories erased. The kicker here is that the Verso we're playing as knows everything I've just told you, but hid it from the group because he knows he ain't Lawrence Fishburne. There's no way Maëlle will voluntarily take the red pill, nor would the rest of the group be okay with simple oblivion. Verso's key motive at this point was he wanted to die. He'd been alive for about 100 years and had to bury everyone he's ever cared about. He's also clearly bothered by the reason he exists, and was very sympathetic to the Paintress as she was pushed out of the canvas. Though, to his dismay, this act did not cure him of his immortality. Anyways, Act 3 is named after Mael, who now unlocks her memories after being gommaged, responds into the canvas, and talks with Verso as his sister. However, Renoir from the real world is now able to take his full form, is determined to stop Mael from remaining in this canvas, and wants to grant Verso his oblivion by destroying it. Destroying the canvas will also prevent Aline and Mael from spending further time in this world, something that gravely concerns Renoir as he states that Mael will die, though we're not told why at this point. Mael and Verso are then saved by Eskie and Minoko, who were not gommaged because they were not created by Aline, but by Verso. Before fleeing, Mael retrieved Lune and Ciel's chroma, basically the equivalent of a person's quote-unquote soul or data in this world. Thanks to her restored memories of her paintress side, she's able to effectively resurrect them both. Act 3 is the shortest in terms of main objectives. Defeat Renoir and prevent him from destroying the world. Before the player gets on with it though, there's a series of optional side quests to max out relationship levels and unlock as much gear as possible. But, man, after I learned that Mael is basically living in a dream world, and Renoir is just trying to keep his family together in the real one, I'm not gonna lie, I felt mildly despondent about the game continuing. Especially because, given this game's story monorail, it seemed like Mael was just gonna get what she wants here. After all, she's in our party, and she's the hero. Could this gem of a game really fail to stick the landing? But hey, after 30 hours of playtime, might as well finish it. As a break from the existentialism, if you max out the relationships of both Lune and Ciel during this time, you learn the following. This will be important later. Ciel had a husband, Pierre, who died suddenly in a shipping accident. Out of grief, she attempted suicide by swimming away from Lumiere until she couldn't move, but ended up back on shore after passing out. She was saved by Eskie, which is hinted to the player way at the start of the game.
He seems nice.
Oh, it's you. Hello again, my terrible swimmer friend. You finally come to learn to swim?
Unbeknownst to her, she was pregnant, and her attempted suicide lost her their only child. Of all the painted people in this canvas, she likely understands grief the most. She is overjoyed once she learns that her husband can be repainted by Mael, and now desires this more than anything. Though, she also states to Verso that she wouldn't have wanted a painted copy of Pierre, as she sees how much torture Verso is experiencing as being a mere grief relief tool for Aline. I find these statements contradictory personally, but more on that later. Meanwhile, Lune's parents were scientists and researchers, and she spent all of her years meticulously working with them to eventually confront the Paintress. They died in Expedition 46, their last words being that Lune would finish their work. She is dismayed that they only viewed her as a creation to continue their legacy. Verso argues that this meant they had a lot of faith in her, and that she still has the ability to make her own choices, independent of her parents. He of course relates to this in several ways, one of which being that he preferred playing music to painting, which slightly annoyed Aline and Renoir at the time. The player can choose to romance Lune or Ciel. Ciel reminds Verso of someone he used to love, and she connects with him given their shared experiences with loss, grief, and resignation. Lune and Verso have conversational chemistry and a shared love of music. She was my personal choice because, well, call me old-fashioned, but I personally don't trust women who are as, forward as Ciel is. Plus, controlling parents' baggage is way easier to deal with than dead husband baggage. Anyways, after mucking about, I set off to defeat Renoir, and successfully did so.
Find a dimension where you're not a loser, I said, except that doesn't exist.
Upon defeating Renoir, he makes one last plea for Mael to leave the canvas. He shows the party what happens when a painter spends too much time here, the deterioration of mind and body, as demonstrated by Aline, something that clearly disturbs Verso. Renoir says that it was once himself that was addicted to the worlds he created, and Aline saves him from the very thing she and Mael were now doing to themselves. Verso's death broke their family, and he's trying to keep them together. Ciel, Lune, and Mael all make the case as to why this world should continue, emphasizing their independence to the player, and that Mael just wants her new family too. Mael also states that her real-life physical condition is a non-issue in this canvas, and that she's able to find joy here, something she can't do in the real world. Renoir finally relents, conceding that provided Mael spends some time outside the canvas, he won't try to destroy it. Just as you think the story is going to get a happy ending, Verso plunges himself into the center of the canvas to convince the fragment of the real Verso's soul to stop painting. This weird world between worlds environment is normally deadly to painted entities, but his immortality from the paintress counteracts it. He now knows what's at stake. He could see that Mael was lying about ever leaving the canvas, and he's the only one who has the will and ability to stop it. The fragment of his soul seems willing to stop painting, but as it's about to, Mael stops him. At this moment, I knew what the game was about to do, and I audibly said, "Oh no," before I was even prompted with the choice. Do you fight here as Verso, ending this world and killing everyone the player has come to know and love, saving Mael from herself? Or do you fight here as Mael and keep this world and its inhabitants alive, but allow her to lose herself? I chose Verso. In this ending, Verso wins the duel, allowing the fragment of child Verso's soul to stop painting, and this destroys the canvas. Eski and Minoko come into the center to embrace Verso as they fade away. Ciel gomages away with a knowing hand touch. Lune stares coldly as she sits down, and she's erased off screen. Her newfound independence torn away from her as she accepts there's nothing she can do.
As long as even one of us stands, our fight is not over.
The Desandra family in the real world then properly grieve for the loss of Verso as they gather around his grave. It's a typical bittersweet ending, further showcased by Alicia's theme making a reprise here with what sounds like a slightly more optimistic key signature and instrumentation, or at least one that sounds more at peace. If the player chooses Mael's ending, Verso becomes visibly distraught and frustrated about existing, saying he doesn't want this life. He begs to be unpainted, but Mael doesn't grant this wish and instead just allows him to age. Gustave, Sophie, everyone lost in prior gomages, even Ciel's husband, are all resurrected and live their lives in Lumiere as they witness Verso begin a piano performance in a concert hall. However, it is shown that Verso is clearly in frustrated agony, and Mael's body is starting to deteriorate as she sits in her seat, with a sinister-sounding piano chord, implying that Mael is indeed never leaving this world. The cycle will continue. In my view, the game almost intends for Verso's ending to be the quote-unquote good one, as it makes the most thematic sense, and Mael's ending is hinted to be disastrous with Renoir being right in the end. And so came my slight frustration with the game's ending options and how we got here. I'm not annoyed with this game's transition from fantasy to tragedy. I actually think it's profoundly well executed. My annoyance is that I don't believe the game needs to hint at which ending is good or bad. Bizarrely, both the creative lead and the lead writer say there is no correct ending, as it's an impossible choice. But then why is there an implication that Verso's ending is more optimistic than Mael's? I've talked to quite a few people in person who've beaten the game, and the common sentiment was, well, first I picked Mael's ending, then I regretted my choice immediately and picked Verso's. For those who picked Verso's ending the first time, they regret nothing. The writer's intent may have been that no ending is better than the other, but then why end Mael's with a sinister piano chord and a distraught Verso? For Verso's ending, why have Mael see a vision of the party waving goodbye to her at his grave, almost washing away the bitter taste of Lune's cold stare? Without the negative and positive undertones respectively, the endings would be that much more even, so to speak. Doesn't that fit the impossible choice narrative better? Mael's ending doesn't even need the hint of being sinister, by the way. Let's go down the list of oddities. Gustave died to save Lumiere, but in his last moments, it was to save Mael particularly. Despite him being alive here in this ending, did he truly save Mael as she's losing her mind and body to the canvas? Am I supposed to believe she told him and Sophie why they were magically alive again, was fully transparent about the cost to herself, and Gustave was just like, "Okay, cool." Mael has already proven by this point incapable of grieving the loss of her true brother, as she feels responsible for his death. Would she let any of the people around her grow old and die? She now has the power to quote-unquote save everyone. I mean, heck, Verso already looks much older while all the other cast hasn't aged a day. How many years has it been already? Have none of Mael's friends told her to leave the canvas as she agreed to? If she tries to stay in the canvas eternally, Renoir will come back to try to get her out, and this whole cycle just begins again. And for Verso's ending, trust me, I know what I chose. But with the exception of Verso's original creations, and most likely Lune and Ciel, all these people were gone at the end of Act 2. It's made clear that painters create individuals based on their memory of them, and given Mael's birth, memories can be erased or implanted. Notice how in Mael's ending, the other citizens just kinda all look the same? To me, this indicates Mael just recreated the populace to the best of her ability. Given the limits of her own memory, no one here is a perfect recreation, not even Gustave or Sophie. So if that's the case, can't Mael recreate these individuals to a sufficient fidelity in her own canvas? I could buy the argument of it just wouldn't be the same, but the cost of that argument is Verso's soul fragment, painting for eternity. Much like the real Verso, he wants rest. I look at it like this. It's not that a purely good, happy ending isn't logically possible here. It's just not available because the characters are who they are in this universe. Renoir said it best when he said, "Life keeps forcing cruel choices." He's referring to the life choices previously made by all involved in this story, and now all that's left is a cruel one. As someone who has witnessed addictions destroy lives and families, including pieces of my own, the drastic action here isn't a false dichotomy. It truly is the only option. Renoir feels genuine sorrow for what he feels he must do, but his family's well-being depends on his willingness to act.
Your friends speak truth, and it changes nothing. You can hate me, but that's a choice I must make.
So, what did I take away from this game? In my opinion, it's teaching us two things. One, ending the cycle of grief requires living in the world as it is, not as we want it to be. Two, we as humans should not have the abilities of the painters under any circumstances. Truth be told, I think the best argument for Mael's ending is that the painters just shouldn't exist. So why not by proxy let the painters destroy themselves and prevent them from perpetuating cruelty? Even Verso is frustrated with the painters effectively toying with people's lives. When it comes to dead family members, there's nothing wrong with having photos or recordings of them as they lived, mere reminders of the presence they had in our lives and for future generations. An often quoted thing about someone dying is that a person dies twice, the first being the physical death of the body, and when someone speaks their name for the last time. There are many variations of this phrase with equally variant attributions. I'll link an interesting blog post about it below. For me personally, the reason why I'm the last firearms enthusiast, amateur mechanic, and musician in my family's generation is because those interests are in my lineage. Choosing to continue those skills is the most active and healthy way that I can remember those who came before. I believe everyone would agree there'd be some ethical boundaries crossed if we had the ability to create perfect sentient imitations of those we lost, or even of a presence that we want in our lives. As we live in the era of LLMs and AI advancements, with it even being used as a form of therapy for some people, this game's release timing couldn't be any better. How long will it be, I wonder, before it is us who have to go on an expedition and make the painstaking choice to sustain, create, or destroy the modern canvas? Will it be us releasing some sentient machine from eternal torment? Stopping someone who can't accept the world as they know it being gone? Or allowing this newfound fantasy to continue because of the life already created within it, and enforcing some kind of middle ground? In Berserk, there's a similar story arc called The Lost Children. A child suffering a cruel life sacrifices her parents and her own humanity to create a fantastical world for her to enjoy forever. She then lures other children to this place to create a whole community, with all of them being transformed into demons with pleasant elf-like appearances. However, they retain their childlike nature while simultaneously losing their humanity. As a result, they constantly attack nearby villages, kill adults out of retribution, and even kill each other whenever they quote-unquote play war. A child encountered by the protagonist is nearly tempted into being transformed, but she's stopped when she is reminded just how much of herself she'll lose in the process. The principle here is similar to Expedition 33. Is it worth giving up your body and your mind to live a fantasy? For the painters in the Clair Obscur universe, there's an apt quote by Vincent van Gogh: "I put my heart and soul into my work, and have lost my mind in the process." Every day, we constantly decide between escapism and responsibility. The parallels between this game and the modern world are painfully obvious. As a more meta example, when the player chooses Verso's ending, it's not like the game instantly uninstalls itself and you can never play it again. Though, in a darkly humorous way that'd make the choice the most quote-unquote real for the player. I could argue that each time someone does a new playthrough, they are implicitly choosing Mael's ending. Lune said it best in Act 1, your beliefs are what you do, not what you say. Furthermore, the game auto-saves right before your last confrontation with Renoir, so you can come back to the canvas known as your save file. Or, the alternative argument is that by only playing the game occasionally, we're seeing things Renoir's way, where enjoyment can be had in moderation of our canvas. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.